Tonight out of Brentwood, where two people were found dead at the home of award-winning actor and director Rob Reiner.
Nick Reiner, the son of legendary director Rob Reiner, has been taken into custody and his name has appeared in an FBI interrogation record. This information immediately sent shockwaves through Hollywood, as it was released just hours after authorities sealed off the Reiner family's mansion in the Brentwood neighborhood.
Director and actor Rob Reiner has confirmed to NBC News that Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, were found stabbed to death.
Few could have imagined that a neighborhood known for its isolation and quiet would become the setting of such a chilling tragedy. Rob Reiner, an enduring icon of American cinema, and his life partner were discovered in circumstances serious enough for investigators to quickly rule out a natural passing. What began as a story marked by mourning and disbelief was soon reclassified as a criminal inquiry, as special investigative units and the FBI simultaneously became involved. So, what truly happened behind the closed doors of the Reiner family home? And why did Nick Reiner become the first name to fall under the scrutiny of federal investigators? On the afternoon of December 14, 2025, the usually quiet Brentwood neighborhood was suddenly sealed off after Romy Reiner contacted the police when she was unable to reach her parents. When authorities arrived, Rob Reiner and his wife were confirmed to have passed away at home, with circumstances serious enough to rule out a natural cause. The scene showed no signs of forced entry or disruption, immediately making the direction of the investigation highly sensitive. The case was quickly transferred to the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division, with the FBI also joining the inquiry. And at that very moment, a piece of information began to leak out, making an already heavy atmosphere even more suffocating. Nick Reiner, the son of Rob Reiner, was being directly questioned by the FBI. According to ABC News and CNN, on the evening of December 14th, just a few hours after the Brentwood scene was sealed off, Nick Reiner was asked by authorities to come to an LAPD facility to assist with the investigation. This meeting took place as investigators were urgently reconstructing the final timeline of Rob Reiner and his wife, including meetings, phone calls, and movements within the 24 or 48 hours before they were discovered. According to law enforcement sources cited by the Los Angeles Times, Nick was questioned in detail about his personal schedule on December 13th and 14th, when he was present in the Brentwood area, his last contacts with his parents, and the recent relationships among family members. The questioning lasted for several consecutive hours and focused mainly on cross-checking his statements with phone data, security camera footage, and timeline markers being collected by police. The entire process was conducted discreetly, with no public escort, no images of handcuffs, and no announcement of an arrest from authorities. In brief statements to the press later that night, LAPD representatives repeatedly emphasized that Nick Reiner was not considered a suspect at that time. One senior investigator told the Los Angeles Times that speaking with Nick was simply part of standard procedure in complex, family-related cases, aimed at helping authorities build a comprehensive picture of what occurred before the incident was discovered. The official also stated clearly that there was no arrest warrant, no one had been detained, and that information circulating on social media claiming Nick has been officially arrested was inaccurate. While police attempted to keep information tightly controlled, the Reiner family chose complete silence. According to Variety, the family's representative released only a brief statement expressing deep grief over the immense loss and declined to comment on Nick's cooperation with investigators. There were no further remarks, no additional statements, and no family members appeared before the media. This silence, according to many Hollywood journalists, inadvertently caused public attention to focus even more intensely on Nick, who had already become the most mentioned name since the case was classified as a criminal inquiry. At the same time, reporters began converging on the Brentwood neighborhood, searching for everyday details that might help piece together the period before the tragedy. Some neighbors living near the Reiner estate told KTLA-TV that they had seen Nick around his parents' home in the days prior, something not considered unusual in a family that maintained frequent contact. However, there were also whispers of having heard tense exchanges coming from inside the house in the evenings, though no one could confirm the content or severity of those conversations. These scattered details quickly spread across forums and social media, where they were further embellished by speculation and emotion. In a short time, they created a sense that signs of instability may have existed before the tragedy occurred, even though no such information had been officially confirmed by investigators. As a result, less than 24 hours after the news broke, Nick Reiner's image began to be viewed through a completely different lens. From a low-profile son, he became a figure scrutinized in minute detail, from his schedule and family relationships to statements he had made in the past.
You know, we did get into fights over things, but ultimately it forced us to make the film better. I mean, you know, we get into issues and I would see, you know.
And from this chain of details, a question increasingly took shape in public discourse. Why did suspicion so quickly converge on Nick Reiner? According to people who were familiar with the family, the relationship between Nick and his father, Rob Reiner, was not tense only in adulthood. As early as Nick's high school years, in his early teens, disagreements reportedly emerged over family discipline, personal autonomy, and the use of money. A source told people that Rob Reiner was a highly principled father, accustomed to closely controlling matters within the family, while Nick showed a strong personality early on and reacted sharply whenever he felt imposed upon. These differences, according to someone who had frequently visited the Reiner home, often escalated into loud arguments, especially during the period when Nick was between 18 and his early 20s, as his desire for independence directly clashed with the family's strict management style. The atmosphere at home became noticeably more strained. A neighbor living near the Brentwood estate told KTLA-TV that on some evenings they could hear prolonged arguments, and at times even the sound of objects being shoved or knocked, enough to draw attention in an otherwise quiet neighborhood, though no one called the police or intervened. Over time, these conflicts did not disappear, but instead became simmering tensions. Nick had periods when he distanced himself from the family and later returned, while Rob Reiner was said to consistently try to maintain an image of family stability in the public eye. This contrast between a calm outward appearance and tension behind closed doors led the public to question whether these conflicts had ever truly been resolved or merely suppressed over the years. However, the factor that caused suspicion to focus on Nick most quickly and intensely came from financial motives. Rob Reiner was not only a renowned director, but also one of Hollywood's most financially significant figures. According to estimates by Forbes and publicly available financial records, his total assets were believed to be in the hundreds of millions of US dollars, including the Brentwood mansion, other real estate holdings, stakes in production companies, and long-term income from the rights to classic films. Rob Reiner had 4 children, but according to Variety and Entertainment Weekly, he had never publicly disclosed the existence of a will or a clear plan for asset distribution. In families with such substantial wealth, this ambiguity is often a source of prolonged tension. A celebrity family analyst once said on MSNBC that simply not knowing one's future financial position can create significant psychological pressure, especially for those who feel their place within the family is not entirely secure. When Nick is viewed within this context, the contrast becomes more pronounced. His siblings were generally seen as more stable, less controversial, and with relatively clear career paths. Nick, on the other hand, was often perceived as being on the margins of the family structure, both in terms of relationships and long-term interests. A family acquaintance said there had been tense discussions related to financial support, assets, and future plans, though none were ever brought to light or publicly confirmed. From a psychological perspective, experts interviewed by CNN noted that long-standing conflicts dating back to adolescence, when combined with financial pressure and a sense of comparison within the family, can create a heightened defensive state, making an individual more easily interpreted in a negative light when a crisis occurs. While no one has claimed this directly relates to the tragedy, in the public eye, these elements became pieces that were easily linked together. And from here, public attention continued to focus more deeply on Nick Reiner himself and the earlier chapters of his life, now being re-examined through a completely different lens. Before the name Nick Reiner appeared in investigative reports and interrogation records, his life had already gone through nearly 2 turbulent decades, something Nick himself openly acknowledged in rare interviews with the American press. According to a 2016 People magazine article, the first fractures did not arrive suddenly but began very early, when Nick was still a teenager living under the tight control of a prominent Hollywood family. Nick said that at first his behavior was experimental in nature and took place within a peer environment. However, those experiments quickly crossed boundaries. The pace intensified, bringing visible changes to his daily routine. Nick frequently stayed awake for multiple nights in a row, neglected school, and gradually lost any sense of a stable schedule. Family members described periods when Nick could barely distinguish day from night, forcing the family to intervene more forcefully. According to People, Nick was first admitted to a treatment facility just before his 15th birthday. This was not an easy decision, and Rob Reiner later admitted it was the moment he felt he had no other choice. However, rather than ending the cycle, it marked the beginning of a long series of subsequent treatments. In the years that followed, Nick's condition never stabilized for long. He moved in and out of various treatment centers across California and several neighboring states, a total of 17 times, a number Nick himself confirmed. Each time he left a facility, Nick tried to return to a normal life, but that balance usually lasted only briefly. A Men's Journal reporter once observed that Nick seemed to be always living in a state of preparing to leave, unable to stay rooted in any one place or maintain a fixed rhythm of life. The inevitable consequence was a growing strain between Nick and his family. According to Nick, there were periods when he rejected the conditions set by his family, from living arrangements, phase, and daily routines to supervision. During those times, Nick left Los Angeles and began a nomadic life that lasted for many years. He moved through states such as Maine, New Jersey, and Texas, changing locations constantly and never having a fixed address. Nick recalled nights spent sleeping outdoors, in parking lots, or in public areas, and stretches of weeks when he had no contact with any family members. According to a summary by ABC News, during this period, Nick encountered several minor issues with local authorities, mostly related to public conduct and administrative violations. While no serious criminal records were made public, these incidents were enough to paint a picture of a life lacking control, filled with risk, and constantly on the margins of society. This chain of experiences later became the foundation for the film Being Charlie, released in 2015, which Nick co-wrote and Rob Reiner directed. According to Variety, many details in the film were drawn almost directly from Nick's real life, including scenes of wandering, treatment facilities, and the feeling of being disconnected from family. The film sparked significant debate for its dark tone and level of realism, with some critics noting that it felt more like a personal life record than a conventional work of fiction. In recent years, Nick said he had returned to Los Angeles, lived near his family, and attempted to rebuild his life. Still, American media noted that the past never truly closed. Whenever the Reiner family faced turmoil, the years of wandering, repeated treatments, and past troubles resurfaced, like a shadow constantly following the name Nick Reiner. And when Nick Reiner was brought into an interrogation room, what unsettled the public most was not only what police asked him, but another question: What had his siblings said about Nick at the very moment he was taken in for questioning? According to Variety, the Reiner family's first official response came on the evening of December 14th, just hours after the deaths of Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner were confirmed. In a brief statement to the media, the family's representative expressed profound grief and asked the public to respect their privacy during the mourning period. Notably, the statement made no mention of the investigation, did not refer to Nick Reiner, and offered no comments beyond expressions of condolence. According to many Hollywood journalists, this restraint was not accidental. An editor at The Hollywood Reporter suggested that this was the family's way of maintaining strict control over information, in a situation where any detail involving Nick could be interpreted in multiple ways. Avoiding his name and neither confirming nor denying anything was seen as a defensive choice. While the official statement remained silent, Nick's siblings also stayed out of the public eye. According to the Los Angeles Times, no individual comments from Jake Reiner or Romy Reiner were recorded in the days immediately following the incident. A source close to the family said the members had agreed not to offer personal opinions, so as not to further complicate the ongoing investigation. This collective silence, rather than easing tension, prompted even more questions from the public. Outside the Brentwood mansion, the scene over the next 24 hours reflected the intensity of the situation. According to KTLA-TV and the Los Angeles Times, several close figures from Rob Reiner's artistic circle arrived one after another. Billy Crystal, a longtime friend of Rob Reiner for decades, was seen visiting the house in the evening and leaving quietly without answering any questions. Shortly after, Larry David also appeared, entered the home directly, and left the area after a brief stay. Both completely avoided cameras. According to an ABC7 reporter, the atmosphere in Brentwood in the following days became unusually heavy. Television vans lined part of the street, while police restricted access to surrounding areas. Some neighbors said they had never seen this quiet neighborhood so overwhelmed by media presence, even during previous high-profile events involving celebrities. Rumors circulated that many other artists had privately contacted the Reiner family, but deliberately avoided appearing publicly to prevent further attention. Alongside the subdued atmosphere of remembrance, behind-the-scenes Hollywood began to stir in a more cautious way. Entertainment Weekly reported that some studios and television networks temporarily postponed rebroadcasts or promotional plans tied to Rob Reiner's work in order to avoid the impression of commercializing a tragedy. At the same time, there were reports that internal discussions about honoring his career were underway, but all such plans were put on hold until the situation became clearer. On social media, public reactions split into multiple streams. One side shared condolences, iconic film scenes, and memories of Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner. The other side raised questions, speculation, and discussion about the family, especially Nick Reiner and the responses of other relatives. This contrast made the overall atmosphere tense, as the boundary between remembrance and curiosity grew increasingly fragile. Amid all the noise, the Reiner family continued to choose absolute silence. No appearances, no further responses, as if trying to preserve one final space of privacy. Because beyond all suspicions and debate, Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner left behind a legacy too significant for Hollywood to ignore. In a statement sent to the press, the family's representative emphasized that regardless of how the investigation unfolds, Rob and Michelle lived full lives, devoted to art, to family, and to the human values they believed in. The family also urged the public to remember them for what they created and what they contributed to society, rather than for how they passed away. It was a brief message, yet one that carried the very real pain of those left behind. To Hollywood, Rob Reiner was known as a major director, but to American society, he was also a powerful voice for political and human rights causes over many decades. According to the Los Angeles Times, Rob Reiner was an outspoken supporter of marriage equality, LGBTQ+ rights, and frequently took part in campaigns advocating for freedom of expression and democracy. He appeared in numerous initiatives opposing discrimination, speaking out against violence, and defending human rights, not only through words, but also through financial support and his broad network of influence. Together with his wife, Rob Reiner also participated in and funded many charitable organizations focused on children, education, and mental health. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the couple contributed to funds supporting underprivileged children, programs helping young people access arts education, and community healthcare organizations across California. Michelle Singer Reiner, though more private, was described by colleagues as the driving force behind many donation efforts, fundraising activities, and logistical support for nonprofit organizations. In particular, Michelle devoted many years to projects preserving culture and the arts, supporting the archiving of film history, photography, and independent creative work. According to Entertainment Weekly, she quietly supported young artists, photographers, and independent filmmakers through small, anonymous funds, guided by the belief that art does not need to be saved by fame, but by opportunity. Many in Hollywood have acknowledged that the social impact of the Reiners extended far beyond what the public ever saw. A veteran producer told The Hollywood Reporter that Rob Reiner did not simply make films, but created space for difficult conversations to take place, ranging from human rights and social injustice to civic responsibility. Michelle, meanwhile, was the one who ensured those values did not remain mere words, but were translated into sustained action. Even the substantial wealth Rob Reiner left behind, according to Forbes and Bloomberg, has been viewed through a different lens. While the family has avoided discussing material value, multiple sources suggest that a significant portion of it may continue to be directed toward charitable causes, education, and social initiatives, consistent with the path the couple pursued during their lives. Amid the noise, grief, and unresolved debate, the Reiner family has held to a single message. Rob and Michelle did not wish to be remembered as victims of a tragedy, but as people who spent their lives standing on the side of human values. And as the headlines inevitably fade with time, what remains is not only films or wealth. The true legacy left by Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner lies in the social values they planted, something that even death cannot erase. The case surrounding the Reiner family still contains many unanswered questions. The final truth will require time, investigation, and clear evidence to emerge. But amid all the uncertainty, one fact is undeniable. Hollywood has lost two individuals who left a deep imprint, not only on the screen, but also on society itself. What do you think about what has happened to the Reiner family? Which details leave you most uncertain? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss upcoming videos where we will continue to update the latest developments and uncover stories rarely told behind the lights of Hollywood.